Oh boy, you guys know by now, if you're seeing my face, it's gonna be something really silly. And today we have a man by the name of Ken Ham, who's a Christian fundamentalist and creationist and Bible literalist, and he's the president and CEO of Answers in Genesis, and he's been pushing the whole creationist thing over the years, and he had a video about dinosaurs, and he says a lot of things in it that I just think I should talk about.
What really happened to the dinosaurs?
Many people are perplexed by the topic of dinosaurs. Where did they come from? When did they live? What happened to them? You see, when you dig up a dinosaur skeleton, it doesn't come with a label attached saying, "Hi, I'm 65 million years old and this is what happened to me." We have to interpret that skeleton in relation to the past.
Now, I must concede that the beginning of this isn't actually really terrible at all. What he said is completely true. We can dig up a fossil, but it doesn't really tell us much just looking at it. Like he said, there's no label to actually tell us anything. We have to go through a process to figure out exactly how old it is, where it came from, what, level of the bedrock it's in, etc., etc. There's a whole bunch of different things you have to go over when it comes to actually analyzing fossilized remains. So, what he's saying so far is totally reasonable. It's going to get a little more unreasonable.
So where did dinosaurs come from? What happened to them? When did they live? I want to show you that when you take God at His word in the book of Genesis, that we can explain dinosaurs, and observational science actually confirms that explanation based upon the Bible.
No, I'm pretty sure science does not confirm the literal interpretation of the book of Genesis. I'm actually fairly confident to say that it doesn't. And I say that, again, I've gone on record saying I am a Christian, but I am not a literalist. I do not think that you can take the book of Genesis and say, this is exactly, in real time, how it all took place, because there's too much that we can analyze in the world to know that can't be completely correct. It doesn't mean God doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that I, lose faith because of it personally, but science doesn't confirm the literal interpretation of the Bible. It does quite the opposite of that, is really where I'm at with it.
See, the Bible tells us that God made the land animals on day 6 of creation. And who else was created on day 6? Well, Adam and Eve. And how long ago was that? Well, when you add up all the dates in the Bible, about 6,000 years. So, taking God at His word in Genesis, dinosaurs lived beside people about 6,000 years ago.
I probably shouldn't have to explain that was wrong. Well, I mean, technically, if you really want to play this game, 6,000 years ago there were people, and technically, birds would fall under the category of dinosaurs. So, if you say just the sentence, dinosaurs and man lived beside each other 6,000 years ago, without any other context, it's not an untrue statement, because birds are still around. That's not what he's talking about, but I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, we could do this dance if you want.
And they were vegetarian to start with. Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 tells us that all the animals are vegetarian. But then Adam sinned, and because of sin, everything changed. The whole of creation now groans because of sin.
I just want to say that he's actually correct with his interpretation of Genesis, at least, on the basis that indeed it does indicate that originally all the animals lived beside each other without an issue, because the plants could actually substitute as meat effectively. I guess God planted a lot of soybeans. The point is that he's not wrong when it comes to what the Bible says. He's wrong with how it relates to science, but he's not wrong with his analytical skills of the book of Genesis so far. My only complaint, the only thing I'm going to bring up is that he brings up, well, Adam sinned. Like, yeah, but Eve sinned too. She did it first. She's the one who listened to the snake. I'm just saying, you throw Adam under the bus. I mean, I'm not saying he listened to her, but you know, like, why is it a problem with Adam suddenly does it? Like, you're implying that Eve could have gotten away with it had she not dragged Adam into this?
In fact, after the event of Noah's flood, God told Noah that now humans could eat meat, could eat animal flesh, but before that time, they were instructed only to be vegetarian. So sometime after sin, obviously animals started changing their diets as well. Then the Bible tells us that there was a global flood and 2 of every kind of land-dwelling, air-breathing animal went on board the boat that Noah built, Noah's Ark. Now people often say, wait a minute, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dinosaur kinds. No, there might be hundreds of dinosaur names, and many of those names are given to different variations within a dinosaur kind. But when you actually work through it, there's probably less than 50 dinosaur kinds. The T-Rex type kind, the raptor type kind, the sauropod type kind, and so it goes on.
Okay, first of all, no. Less than 50? Different kinds of dinosaur. Yeah, there's a bunch of names because there's a bunch of different species. Like, in order to preserve all of them, he would have had to take them all on board. Same with every other kind of animal that has existed. There's a bunch of different types of species underneath an umbrella. Like, oh, there's a bunch of different names, but there's only certain kinds. Also, T-Rex kind, you mean theropods? They have a specific names. You mentioned sauropods, you got that one. The T-Rex Listen, are you trying to dumb it down for people, or do you just not know? I'm leaning on the latter.
And the other thing to remember is that the average size of a dinosaur is only the size of a sheep or a German Shepherd dog or a small pony or something like that. You see, some of the dinosaurs did grow large, like the sauropods, but even they hatched from eggs and were once young adults, and so would not have been that large. Actually, there was plenty of room on board Noah's Ark for 2 of every kind of the dinosaur kind. And I'm sure that God chose those young adults that were ready for the new world to populate in the new world.
Well, I mean, I can get down with the theory that, well, if Noah's Ark was real, and he really did take 2 of every kind of animal, that when it came to things like sauropods or even elephants, he would have taken juveniles. Because they are, as you say, smaller and would eat less than a large adult. So that explanation does make sense. There's no basis for it, even in the Bible, that would be the case, but common sense does dictate that does seem like a reasonable explanation, but I'm still stuck on this whole, well, there's only like 50 kinds of dinosaurs. Like, there were a lot. And also, we always talk about the dinosaurs. Everyone goes, the creationists always harp on the dinosaurs, the dinosaurs, the dinosaurs. What about all the other creatures that we know existed before the dinosaurs? Or at least in that's just use the creationist interpretation, they existed alongside man. What about all of those animals, like Dimetrodon, for example? Like, is the Permian era a joke to you? Because there were a lot of different kinds of creatures then, too, and most of them at that time weren't dinosaurs. So, what about them? Are we going to include them? Like, I don't think that it is... What I need to stress here is how unfathomable it may be to really process, even for someone who isn't a creationist, who is a scientist, just how many different species of creature, even just different genuses of creature, have existed over the span of the Earth's existence. There are so many different life forms that vary wildly in their approach to survival. It's almost it's mind-blowing, actually. It's insane, but it is the case. But we know those animals existed, but in fossils, and if we're going to bring this into creationism at all, those animals must have also existed alongside us in the creationist model. Okay? So was there room for them too, then? Is that what we're trying to say? We put them on board next to everybody else? Like, because there's a lot. Like, how big was the ark, guys? I'm just saying, like, you can pretend the whole less than 50 dinosaurs. That already is wrong. But now we're talking about an it's such an infinite increase in terms of the amount of animals you have to throw on board this ship. Even just putting 2 of every kind of animal in the modern day on a single ship would be a absurd kind of task. But, if God did a miracle or something, I can see it working. Like, that's kind of what he does, but, like, I'm just saying. I don't think you've really thought this through.
What happened to those land animals that didn't go on board the ark? They were drowned. Many of them turned into fossils. The dinosaur fossils we find, most of them probably come from the time of the flood, over 4,300 years ago, and therefore they're only thousands of years old, not millions of years old.
Yeah, but what's your basis for that theory? Because actual scientists, actual paleontologists, actual geologists have actually done, like, actual scientific dating that can show how old something is. And they're way older than that. Like, there's just way more evidence for it being millions and not thousands, like you're saying.
Those that came off the ark started to spread out over the earth, and then, because of changing conditions, many animals have become extinct, including the dinosaurs. Really, for animals to become extinct is nothing new. We see it happening every year. Now, is there any evidence that's consistent with that explanation of dinosaurs? Actually, there is lots of evidence consistent with that. We have dragon legends all over the earth, just as we have flood legends. Flood legends attest to the fact there was a real flood. Dragon legends attest to the fact there were real animals called dragons, and the descriptions of those creatures in many instances fit the dinosaurs.
I mean, they're close, but they're obviously based off of a misinterpretation of their own remains. It is far more logical to assume that ancient cultures simply found the remains, didn't realize how old they were, and began associating them with the dragon mythos that spread all over the world. I mean, we have evidence that the Chinese literally did that. They literally called them dragons because they didn't know what else they would be. So, it doesn't necessarily indicate that the dinosaurs were alive, just that they found the remains, didn't know how old they were.
And then there are cave paintings all over the earth done by people hundreds of years ago who drew animals that they were familiar with, and some of those paintings look just like the dinosaurs.
First of all, I would love it if you actually, like, showed those paintings on screen, and second of all, I think you're assuming that these cave paintings do look like actual dinosaurs that we know them to be. Let's assume that's the case. First of all, hundreds of years? Really? Second of all, I think a lot of people completely underestimate the lack of limits, actually. The sheer limitless potential, let's rephrase, of the human imagination. Paintings are just that, paintings. And humans can imagine a lot of crazy stuff sometimes. Stuff that doesn't even exist in any way. Like cultures evolve, different ideas get spread around, and those ideas get enhanced on with different thoughts and different concepts. There are creative people. Just because over the thousands of years we've existed on the planet, occasionally someone draws or carves something that kind of looks like it might be a dinosaur. It doesn't necessarily mean they saw something like that. They could have, There are other explanations beyond, see, they're real! They were right next to us the whole time, and no, that doesn't necessarily mean that at all.
And there's even indication in the Bible.
If you go where I think you're about to go, I swear.
Of a dinosaur that lived beside a man after the flood. Go and read the book of Job, Job chapter 40, verse 15. Behemoth.
Every time with the behemoth. Every time. It never fails. They always go there. It doesn't even match the description of a dinosaur when you read it. I've been over it so many times before. It sounds like a hippo. Okay? Definitely not a dinosaur. You are killing me. Stop bringing that up, okay? It's never gonna be an accurate statement to say that they were describing a dinosaur. You can read it. It clearly doesn't indicate that. They don't even call it a dragon, which is apparently the name of that ancient cultures called dinosaurs based on your assumptions. The behemoth is never referred to as a dragon, so why would it be associated with a dinosaur at all, even in your Earth model?
The largest land animal God made. The description fits something like a sauropod dinosaur.
No, it doesn't! doesn't! I love how you don't actually read the description, because if you actually read it, we would be able to see that it doesn't match it at all!
Living with Job after the flood. We've also found in our present world dinosaur bones with what appear to be red blood cells and soft tissue still in them, indicating they can't be millions of years old.
Can't is such a strong word when it comes to any kind of biological preservation, because to be truthful, even in the scientific community, we always find surprises. Certain things get held and preserved over way longer periods of time than we even thought reasonable. It's true. We've found impressions and, certain remains, preserved remains under very specific conditions that were parts of an animal that we thought would never have lasted as long as they did. That's true. Doesn't mean that they're just not that old. It just means that the Earth is a lot better at preserving things sometimes than we give it credit for. That's all that is. It's great when we find that stuff, but it's very rare. If so many of these remains were that young, we'd find that way more often. We don't.
When people ask me what happened to the dinosaurs, my usual answer is, well, they died. But of course, they didn't die out millions of years ago. Many died at the time of the flood. And those that were alive on Noah's Ark, their descendants died out sometime after the flood. It's the Bible's history that explains dinosaurs.
Logistically, I would think that if, this entire kind of animal, a whole group of creature inexplicably disappeared, I feel like there'd be a mention of that. Because they're just gone. Because there were a lot of freaking dinosaurs. Why didn't dinosaurs last like everything else did? I'm just throwing it out there. I appreciate that he acknowledges that animals do go extinct, but why would the dinosaurs specifically do that over the course of 6,000 years without anybody saying anything or writing it down or any kind of mention? Really, if one more person brings up the frickin' behemoth, I'm gonna scream. That's where I'm at with it. And with that, a special thank you goes out to my apex predators, Metal for Life Guy, Dr. Racer78, and Arthur Roy. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.